Good morning. I hope I'm working now. We had some technical issues, basically low internet speed, which is what happens when you live in the boonies. But compared to when I moved out here 5 years ago, it's much better. Anyhow, a few films to talk about. Post Oscars, we have, excuse me, Ben is Back, the film about the opioid crisis starring Julia Roberts. We have Colette, the period drama with Keira Knightley. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the Chinese film called The Wandering Earth, which I saw last night. I haven't I've started my review. I haven't finished it, so I'll finish it later and I'll post it on my website, Howard for Film, Howard, F-O-R film.com. And you can read it there. And you can read all my reviews there if you want. So if you don't want to listen to me, you can read, or you can even do both. And comment. Please comment. All right. First film, not Ben is Back. I call this Not Without My Son. If you remember the Sally Field movie from 30 years ago, based on a true story, called Not Without My Daughter. So I call this Not Without My Son. So, with the opioid crisis in America, this is a real crisis, not an imagined crisis, national crisis. With the opioid crisis in America affecting so many lives, it's very sad. And it's interesting. I ask people here, do we have an opioid crisis in Hong Kong? And I don't know that we do. We never hear about it. I certainly don't know anybody. I mean, I'm sure I know people, but I've never heard of it happening here. People dying of opioid overdoses or fentanyl. I mean, I don't know. So anyhow, it's not surprising that these stories are making it to the screen in Hollywood. We had the film Beautiful Boy a few weeks ago, about which is based on the bookended memoirs of David and Nick Sheff. The film was okay, wasn't great. And now we have Ben is Back. Now, Ben is Back is fiction, but it's no doubt based on actual events. Now, as this film opens, it's the day before Christmas in a quiet town somewhere near New York City. And in fact, the film was shot in and around White Plains and Nyack, New York, which is just north of Manhattan, maybe about 30 minutes outside of New York. I've driven through it, so I know where it is. I've driven through both places. And so it's the day before Christmas, and it's in this town. And Holly Burns, who's played by Julia Roberts, she's busy getting into the spirit of the holiday with her kids. She's got the teenaged Ivy, played by Catherine Newton. People would recognize her from the TV show Big Little Lies. She was also in Three Billboards, and she was in Lady Bird. And Ivy's from from Holly's first marriage, and then she has Liam and Lacey, who are from her second marriage to Neil, played by Courtney P. Vance, who played Johnny. What was his name? Johnny Jackson. Johnny Cochran from The People versus O.J. Simpson. Now, the family's plans are thrown into disarray when Holly's eldest, Ben, played by Lucas Hedges, who was also in Three Billboards and Lady Bird and Manchester by the Sea, he suddenly arrives home on a 24-hour pass from the drug rehab facility where he's been living. Now, naturally, Holly is overjoyed to have her son home for the holidays, but Neil and Ivy are a little bit more reserved in their excitement. So to settle everyone's concerns, Holly hides all the medicines and she hides her jewelry, and she lays down a strict rules of behavior that Ben must accept if he's going to stay. And Ben agrees, and the family moves forward with their plans, and it seems everything's going to be okay. But when they go out on Christmas Eve, after they come home, they find that their house has been broken into and their family's dog has been taken. And with that, both Ben and Holly realize that there's no such thing as a clean break when it comes to your past. Basically, you can run, but you can't hide. Now, this film is it's written, it's directed, it's produced by Peter Hedges, he wrote About a Boy, and he wrote What's Eating Gilbert Grape, one of my favorite Johnny Depp films, and I think is that the one with Leonardo DiCaprio? I think that's the one with Leonardo DiCaprio. Yeah. Great film. Saw it a long, long time. God, I must have seen it like 25 years ago. A great film. So he wrote both of those. And he also happens to be Lucas's dad. So this is a family affair. Now, unfortunately, he's put two movies into one here, and it just doesn't work. The first half of the movie, it's an interesting story about how well a family knows, or they think they know, its recovering child or sibling, and how wide-reaching this national emergency is, and how it's entered everybody's home in some way or fashion. That part's interesting. But the second part, when the house gets broken into and the dog gets stolen, and they have to go find the dog, and everything that goes with that, and I'm not going to get into it. It's a crime thriller, and it's not that interesting. There's a lot of what happens is, I'm going to be careful that I don't reveal too much. What happens is that the movie really focuses at that point on Ben and Holly as they're driving in the middle of the night to try to find the dog and to solve this issue about who broke into the house. And what it does is it leaves Ivy and Neil at home, and every once in a while Holly calls up and has to sort of say what's going on, or not say, lie to them, and deal with that. So it becomes not interesting, because they're not actually interacting with each other. They're talking by phone. And of course it's all, when you make a film, you actually don't do that. The scenes are shot separately. So the energy of the film just goes like this. So so the second half I didn't like it, and it just gets drawn out far too long. And quite sadly, there are some interesting characters that were introduced to in the second half that they could have been brought into the first half of the film. And again, I think it would have been more interesting. And there's one scene between Julia Roberts and this young actor by the name of David Zaldivar. This is his first feature film. He plays one of Ben's childhood friends who's also an addict. This was a good scene. It was a strong scene. And I thought, so here's a character that we're introduced to in the second half of the film. I would have liked to have seen him in the first half of the film, because there was this scene with the two of them. She realizes that he's an addict. He needs help. He's somebody's child, and she wants to help this kid, but her priority is to help her son first, and rightly so. So she's sort of struggling with this conflict inside of her, this motherly conflict where she wants to help this kid, but she's got to help her kid first. And I thought that was really good. I wish that would have been in the first part of the movie. So, oh well. Having said that, though, I think, the story's got its problems, but I think, the film is well acted. Julia Roberts is really good. She's changed from becoming America's sweetheart to America's mom, and she's a great mom because I'd say she's a cool one because she uses 4-letter words at the right time, and she's not afraid to speak her mind. There's also a very good scene between her and the family doctor that she happens to run into in the shopping mall. And again, that one was a little too short. I would have liked to have seen more of that, because that was a really good scene too. So you know what? There were some good parts to this, but on the whole, it was not as good as it could have been. So unfortunately, I didn't dislike the film. I just thought not as good as it could have been. Better than Beautiful Boy, though. I like Beautiful Boy, but I like this film better. So my feeling is, check it out. You don't have to check it out right away. It'll come to a streaming service or an in-flight entertainment system near you very, very soon, if not already. But it opened yesterday in Hong Kong. So, you can go see it or not go see it. Up to you. So that's called Ben is Back. Second film I'm going to talk about is Colette, which is the period drama starring Keira Knightley as Colette. And if you don't know who Colette was, she was an amazing woman. She was a French novelist, and many people claim she's France's best. I don't know. Best seems not the right word here, but certainly the most famous female French novelist. She was an actress. She was a mime. She was a trendsetter, and she was a woman who was pretty much game to try anything. She, she was incredible. If you've seen the film Gigi, she wrote it. It's based on the books that she wrote. So she's her influence has certainly been around in the 20th century. Um, so this film I'm going to call The French Wife, with French in parentheses, based on the film that we saw a couple weeks ago, The Wife, starring Glenn Close. This is a period drama French version of it with people with British accents. And the story begins with a teenage Gabrielle, played by Keira Knightley, who was in Collateral Beauty and The Imitation Game and Begin Again and lots of films. And she's living in a rural Burgundy town of Saint-Sauveur, along with her parents. And literary entrepreneur Henri Gauthier-Villas, played by Dominic West. People would know him from Tomb Raider, the movie last year about the Lara Croft reboot movie. He's been in the TV show The Affair. He was on The Wire on TV for many, many years, so you probably know who he is. So he plays literary entrepreneur Henri Gauthier-Villas, and he is an old friend of the family, and he takes a shine to the girl, she goes by the name of Gabrielle at this point in her life, and she to him. And before long, they're married and living in Paris. Now, Gauthier-Villas, he goes by the name Willie. Everybody knows him as Willie. He runs a literary factory where he employs ghostwriters to produce fiction under the name Willie. And he's quite famous in Paris. He's not successful, but he's famous. So, so as I said, he has his problems with money. And they're struggling until Gabrielle tries her hand at writing, and she pens the novel Claudine à l'école, Claudine at school, and it's an immediate bestseller. Now, 3 more Claudine novels follow. Each of them is racier than the last, and it seems Paris can't get enough of her adventures, Claudine's adventures. And they mount a stage adaptation of Claudine à l'école, and it's very successful, and the couple just couldn't be happier. Everything is going their way. But it doesn't last, because Willie and Gabrielle now goes under her mononym as Colette. So Willie and Colette have both decided they want an open marriage. So he hooks up with a young ingenue, and she gets together with the gender-bending Missy, who's the Marquise de Belleboeuf, played by Denise Gough, who was in the film Jimmy's Hall from a few years back, Irish actress. Now, when the money runs out again, Colette decides to toss Willie to the curb and publish under her own name. Now, as I said, it's very interesting that this film follows a very similar arc to the Glenn Close film, The Wife. I mean, I'm talking broad brushstrokes here, but similar. Both take place in the literary world. Both involve a woman writer who exists in the shadow of her successful husband, who's successful because of her, and she stays in this relationship until it's time to leave the bum and strike out on her own. Now it's interesting that Colette was nominated, the real Colette was nominated for Nobel Prize in Literature in 1948. And if you've seen The Wife, it also involves the Nobel Prize. So it makes me wonder if the writers of The Wife had the French author Colette in mind when they wrote their screenplay. They might have. I don't know. We'd have to ask them. Now, the movie Colette, it features some excellent performances, particularly from Dominic West, who's delightfully caddish. He's got this very energetic performance style. Look, and she's good too, but he's better than she is. But the film falters because it doesn't quite capture Colette's daring. I want to say risque-ness, but I don't think that's a real word. But she was a risque. She loved taking risks, and it doesn't. We see things. We see Colette on stage where she reveals some skin to the audience, and off stage she's having a wonderful time in bed with Missy, and even earlier she was with Louisiana Belle. By the name of Georgie Raoul Duval, played by Eleanor Tomlinson. You see, she's a lesbian, I suppose she's bisexual, and of course Missy is transsexual, although she's portrayed. We don't know about Missy, but let's assume she was transsexual. So there's a lot there. You do see it, but it doesn't really transcend off the screen. You know, you don't feel the raciness of it. And I think that unfortunately is because the director and co-writer Westmoreland, who also penned Still Alice, great film, I think he took it too safe. Maybe this is my guess, is he didn't want to have the film get an R rating, which I think it should have been, or in Hong Kong in category 3. It could have been, not that it should have been, it could have been that, given the subject matter. He didn't want to have it. He wanted the film to be more mainstream. And I think because of that, we ended up with a bland vichyssoise. This film needed to be spicier. It needed to be racier. My feeling is I would have made this film an R film and just had it racier. That's me, you know. Maybe it wouldn't have. Look, the film's not making a lot of money anyways, so you know, I don't know that they had too much to gamble here. But you know, they rolled the dice, and I don't think they won. I don't think they got a 7 or doubles or whatever. They didn't get craps, but they didn't do so well either. So my feelings with Colette again. It opened yesterday in Hong Kong. You don't have to rush out to see this film. Again, you know, you can watch this film on a streaming service, watch this film on an airplane. You know, it's a mediocre film. Not bad, not as good as it could have been. So, you know, you got 2 films that opened yesterday in Hong Kong that I'm like, yeah, take it or leave it, not great. Finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about the film, The Wandering Earth, which is China's huge blockbuster film, science fiction film, cost $50 million US. It's made so far $655 million US, mostly in China. It's only now going around the world. Apparently, I think that I'm trying to remember which company in China has the distribution rights, the cinematic rights. They say it's going to come to about 3 or 4 cities in in Canada. You know, it's going to go to all the big Chinese cities, or where there's Chinese populations in North America, Australia, and New Zealand. But the other day, Netflix announced they bought it for their streaming service. So very soon, probably within the next couple of months, it'll be available on Netflix. It's called The Wandering Earth. It's based on a short story of the same name by a fellow named Liu Cixin, and that story won a Hugo Award. I don't know if it won the Hugo Award, but he won a Hugo Award. And basically, what's happened is the sun is dying, melting. It's doing something, and so it means the Earth is in peril. So the governments of the Earth band together, and they decide that they're going to move the Earth out of the solar system to another system, and in order to preserve human civilization. So this Chinese astronaut by the name of Liu Peiqiang, he goes up to a space station that's going to help Earth move, and he's on a 17-year mission. He leaves his 4-year-old son in the care of his father, or perhaps his father-in-law, maybe his father-in-law. I'm not so sure. I think his father. Yeah, I think it's his father-in-law. And then flash forward 17 years, and the kid is now 21. And then the movie, God, I mean, you need to have a roadmap, because this story goes at warp speed, and it just like bounces all over the place. And there's a lot of setup. There's storylines that just get thrown out and then thrown in and then thrown out. A lot happens. It's like a 2-hour movie. A lot happens, and something. I mean, it was like, I sat there and I watched this last night with my friend Liz, who's also a critic, and I kept saying, "What the hell's going on?" Honestly, it's okay. It's all right. Look, I have to say, in China's defense, and God knows, I never defend China. In China's defense, look, it's an expensive film. They clearly they spent a lot of money on special effects, on pyrotechnics. I wish they would have spent a little bit more money on story, because there's no story. Well, there is a story, but it's just like such a bad story. Um, and look, there's no character development. The main character, who's this young kid, the Ochi, this 21-year-old, you just want to smack him. And his half sister Dodo, whose only role in this film is to pout and whine. Smack them both. So it doesn't build, you don't build a lot of empathy for these characters. I felt sorry for the father, Liu Pei-cheng, who's on the space station. So, and it borrows very heavily from Hollywood films like Passengers, 2001: A Space Odyssey, Blade Runner. I could probably name about half a dozen films that it borrows from. And by borrow, I mean steal. Not a horrible film. Not horrible. And look, it's doing well. It's doing extremely well. $655 million US so far worldwide. Most of that in China. 95% of that in China. But look, now it's going to go outside. It's doing very, very well. So what do I know? The audience has spoken. They love the film. So it's called The Wandering Earth. In Chinese, it's Liu Lang Ti Qiu, which basically means Wandering Earth. So it's, as I said, it's going to come to Netflix very shortly, and you can watch it or not. There. That's it for this week. I got to run. Have a great week. Welcome to March. Can't believe it's March already. See ya.